The theft. The night sky over planet Yalara was painted with two large moons, their silver light reflecting on the crystal blue trees of the valley. It was a peaceful place, untouched by war and conflict. But that peace was about to be shattered. A deep rumbling noise shook the ground. A shadow passed over the village, blocking out the moonlight. The villagers looked up in horror as a massive Skrethi warship descended from the sky. The ship was dark, its metal hull covered in glowing red symbols. It hovered over the valley like a hungry beast preparing to strike. Inside one of the small houses, Lura, a young alien girl with violet skin and golden eyes, clutched a glowing crystal in her hands. Her heart pounded in fear. She could feel it. Her bond with Vyrax, her dragon, was trembling. Something was terribly wrong. Suddenly, the ground exploded as the Skrethi warriors landed. Their armor gleamed under the moonlight, their four muscular arms gripping weapons that pulsed with energy. They moved with terrifying speed, knocking down anyone who stood in their way. Lura ran outside just in time to see them reach the sacred dragon pens. Her worst fear came true. Vyrax, her dragon, was trapped in a cage of energy, roaring in rage. His dark blue scales shimmered under the force field, his wings struggling against the invisible prison. The Skrethi leader, a tall warrior with cybernetic eyes, sneered at the beast. Powerful. Rare. Perfect for sale, he growled in his deep mechanical voice. No, Lura screamed, running toward them. One of the warriors stepped forward and grabbed her by the arm, lifting her effortlessly off the ground. She kicked and struggled, but his grip was like iron. You are lucky we do not take you too, little one, the warrior chuckled. But your dragon, he belongs to us now. Vyrax let out a deafening roar, his golden eyes locking onto Lura's. He struggled harder, but the energy field shocked him every time he moved. The dragon's pain shot through Lura's mind like a dagger. Please, she begged. He is my soul bond. You can't. The Skrethi leader laughed. A soul bond. Even better. That means he is strong. He turned to his soldiers. Take the beast. We leave now. The warriors dragged the cage toward their ship, the force field humming with power. Lura could feel Vyrax's desperate emotions through their bond. Fear, anger, helplessness. She tried to reach out to him with her mind, but the Skrethi technology was blocking their connection. The villagers tried to fight back, but they were no match for the invaders. In mere minutes, the Skrethi boarded their ship, taking Vyrax with them. As the engines flared to life, Lura collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath. Her body felt weak, as if a part of her soul had been ripped away. The warship rose into the sky, disappearing into the darkness. The silence that followed was unbearable. Her dragon was gone. A human steps forward. Days passed, but no one dared to chase the Skrethi. The village elders gathered, whispering in hushed voices. The Skrethi were too powerful, they said. Trying to fight them would be suicide. Lura didn't care. She would go alone if she had to. Then, one evening, as she sat alone under the great crystal tree, a shadow fell over her. A deep, rough voice spoke. I hear you lost something. Lura looked up to see a human standing before her. He was tall, his body covered in a battered leather jacket, a laser pistol strapped to his belt. His face was lined with scars, his brown eyes filled with something Lura couldn't place. Confidence. Amusement. His name was Jax Carter. Lura narrowed her eyes. Who are you? Jax smirked. Just a guy who doesn't like bullies. She frowned. You mean the Skrethi? Yeah. He sat down beside her, pulling out a small metal flask and taking a sip. They take what they want, hurt whoever they please. I don't like that. Lura clenched her fists. No one is helping. They say it's too dangerous. Jax leaned back, staring at the sky. They're probably right. Lura's heart sank. She thought for a moment that this human was different, but he was just like the rest. Afraid. Then Jax grinned. But I'm not they. Lura's eyes widened. You mean? Jax stood up and stretched. I'll get your dragon back. Lura's breath caught in her throat. You will. Sure, he shrugged. It'll be fun. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. You don't understand. The Skrethi are warriors. They're ruthless. They have weapons. So do I. Jax patted his pistol. Besides, he cracked his knuckles. I'm human. We do crazy things all the time. Lura hesitated. But why? Why would you risk your life for me? Jax looked at her for a long moment. Then, without answering, he turned away. Where did they take it? He asked instead. Lura felt hope stir in her chest for the first time since Virax was stolen. She didn't know if this human was insane or if he truly believed he could pull it off. But right now, he was the only one willing to try. And that was enough. The dangerous journey. Jax Carter had seen a lot in his life. Bar fights on asteroid stations, smuggler chases through radiation storms, and even a few near-death experiences in the void of space. But this was something new. He leaned against his old beat-up starship, arms crossed as he listened to Lura explain what she knew about the Skrethi's movements. The girl's golden eyes burned with a mix of desperation and determination. She needed him. But Jax wasn't doing this for her. He was doing it because he hated slavers, thieves, and those who thought they were untouchable. The Skrethi don't just raid for fun, Lura said, her voice firm. They sell rare creatures to the highest bidder. Virax, he's probably already on the black market. Jax exhaled sharply. Dan. He pulled out a small holopad, tapping the screen. A galactic star map flickered to life in front of them, showing a network of trade routes, abandoned colonies, and pirate-controlled territories. Any idea where they might be selling him? Jax asked. Lura hesitated. Then she reached into her robe and pulled out a small glowing crystal. I might be able to track him, she admitted. Jax raised an eyebrow. Oh, magic. Lura frowned. No, it's our bond. I can feel him, if I focus. Jax gave a lopsided grin. All right, Jitty, let's see what you got. Lura closed her eyes, gripping the crystal tightly. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a faint hum filled the air, and the crystal began to glow brighter. Jax whistled. Well, I'll be damned. A tiny red dot appeared on his star map, pulsing softly in a distant sector. Their base, Lura whispered. They're keeping him there. Jax narrowed his eyes at the coordinates, an asteroid belt on the edge of Skrethi-controlled space. Figures, he muttered. They're hiding in a nest of space rocks. Perfect place for a black market deal. He shut off the holomap and stepped toward his ship. All right, Hid. You got guts. I'll give you that. But this won't be easy. If we're going in, we need a plan. Lura nodded. I understand. Jax smirked. Good, because we're about to pull off the dumbest heist in the galaxy. The journey begins. Jax's ship, the Black Star, wasn't fancy, but it was fast, quiet, and deadly when it needed to be. The engines rumbled as they left Yalara's atmosphere, the planet shrinking behind them. Lura sat in the co-pilot's seat, her hands gripping the armrests tightly as the ship jumped to hyperspace. Jax glanced at her. First time in a human ship. She nodded. Relax, he chuckled. This baby survived worse than some Skrethi thugs. Lura wasn't worried about the ship. She was worried about Virax. She could still feel him, but his presence was weak, clouded. The bond that once felt like an unbreakable thread now flickered like a dying flame. Jax noticed her troubled expression. He's still alive, he said. That's what matters. Lura looked at him. How do you know? Jax shrugged. Because if he wasn't, you'd be screaming right now. She shivered. He was right. The bond would have shattered completely if Virax had died. Jax turned his attention back to the controls. We'll reach the asteroid belt in 6 hours. Get some rest while you can. Lyra hesitated, then unbuckled her seat. She didn't trust this human yet, but he was her only hope. She curled up in one of the small bunks at the back of the ship, gripping the glowing crystal to her chest. Jax, meanwhile, leaned back in his chair, staring at the streaking stars outside the window. He had a bad feeling about this, but bad feelings never stopped him before. Trouble in hyperspace. 4 hours into the journey, the ship's warning alarms blared. Jax's eyes snapped open. What the hell? Lyra ran into the cockpit, her face pale. What's happening? Jax cursed and flipped several switches on the console. The holographic radar lit up with 3 red blips approaching fast. Looks like we've got company, Jax muttered. Lyra's stomach twisted. Screthy. Nope. Worse. The ship's comm system crackled to life, and a low, growling voice filled the cockpit. Jax Carter, you should have stayed dead. Lyra saw Jax's expression harden. Who is that? She whispered. Jax sighed. An old friend. The radar blips got closer. Lyra could now see the 3 black fighter ships chasing them, their engines glowing with a sickly green hue. Jax's fingers danced over the controls. Hold on tight, he said. Things are about to get interesting. Lyra barely had time to brace herself before the ship spun into a hard dive, avoiding the first barrage of laser fire. The chase. The Black Star shot through the asteroid field at insane speed, dodging massive space rocks, while the enemy fighters pursued them. Lyra gritted her teeth as the ship jerked violently, barely avoiding a collision. Do you even know how to fly? She yelled. Jax laughed. I'm making it up as I go. The enemy ships fired again, their plasma blasts sizzling past the cockpit window. Jax growled. All right, you want to play. Let's play. He flipped a switch, and the Black Star's rear turret whirred to life, automatically targeting their attackers. Boom! One enemy ship exploded as a well-placed shot hit its engine. The other 2 adjusted, now trying to box them in. Jax's eyes narrowed. Oh, you sneaky bastards. He suddenly cut the engines. For a brief, terrifying moment, the ship went completely dark, drifting silently. The enemy ship shot past them, caught off guard. Jax grinned. Gotcha. He restarted the engines and fired the ship's main cannon. Boom! Another enemy ship erupted into flames. The last one hesitated. Jax leaned into the comms. Tell your boss I'm still alive. And tell him I'm coming. The final ship turned and ran, disappearing into the void. Jax exhaled and stretched. Well, that was fun. Lyra stared at him, stunned. Who were they? She asked. Jax's grin faded. Bad people, he said. We'll talk later. For now, they had bigger problems. They were close to the Screthy's asteroid base, and there was no turning back now. The heist plan. The Black Star drifted silently in the darkness, hidden behind the jagged edges of an asteroid, twice the size of a city. Jax Carter sat in the pilot's chair, boots propped up on the console, chewing on a dried ration bar like he didn't have a care in the galaxy. Lyra, on the other hand, could barely sit still. They had arrived at the Screthy's black market base, a floating fortress carved into the largest asteroid in the belt. From the cockpit window, she could see ships of every kind docking and leaving, their engines flashing like fireflies against the black void. Merchant freighters, smuggler crafts, even a few heavily armored warships belonging to crime lords. This wasn't just a Screthy hideout. This was an intergalactic criminal hub. And somewhere inside that fortress, Virax was trapped. Lyra's fingers tightened into fists. We have to hurry. Jax didn't look up. Patience, kid. Lyra spun toward him. Patience, my dragon isn't there. Jax waved a hand, cutting her off. I get it, but rushing in without a plan is how you get yourself killed. Or worse, captured. Lyra crossed her arms but said nothing. Jax smirked. That's better. Now, let's talk strategy. He tapped a button on the holopad, and a blueprint of the asteroid fortress flickered to life. "There are 3 ways inside," he began. "The first, we land the ship and try to blend in. But considering I've pissed off half the crime lords in this sector, that might not go well." Lura's brow furrowed. "What's the second way?" Jax grinned. "We blow a hole in the side and crash the party." Lura gaped at him. "That's not a plan. That's suicide." "Exactly why we're going with option 3, Jax said, pointing to a narrow maintenance tunnel running along the asteroid's spine. Old ventilation shafts, used for dumping engine fumes. No security. No cameras. If we slip in through there, we'll be inside before anyone knows we're here." Lura leaned closer. "And then what?" Jax's grin widened. "Then, we steal your dragon. Infiltration begins." Jax maneuvered the Black Star into position, keeping the ship's engines on silent mode. Lura followed him to the airlock, her heart pounding. "Ever done a spacewalk before?" Jax asked, handing her a magnetic grapple gun. She shook her head. Jax chuckled. "Guess today's your lucky day." The airlock hissed open, revealing the cold, infinite void. The asteroid base loomed in front of them, the narrow vent just within reach. Jax clipped his tether to his belt. "Stay close, and whatever you do, don't drift off into space. It sucks." Before she could respond, he jumped. Lura inhaled sharply. "This is insane." Then she jumped after him. The weightlessness made her stomach lurch, but her tether pulled her forward. Within seconds, she landed beside Jax, clinging to the asteroid's rough surface. Jax wasted no time. He pulled out a laser cutter and began slicing open the vent's outer panel. Sparks floated weightlessly around them as the metal hissed apart. Lura swallowed hard. "You do this often?" Jax grinned. "You'd be surprised." The panel popped loose, revealing a dark tunnel. Jax slipped inside first, motioning for Lura to follow. As soon as they were in, he sealed the hatch behind them. No turning back now. Deep inside the beast, the ventilation shafts were cramped and silent, except for the faint hum of machinery in the distance. Jax led the way, crawling through the narrow tunnels like he'd done this 1,000 times before. Lura followed, her pulse racing. Every few feet, she reached out with her soul bond, trying to feel Virax. The connection was still faint, but stronger than before. He was close. Then, Jax halted suddenly. Lura almost bumped into him. "What?" she whispered. Jax pointed ahead. A Skrithy guard drone floated just outside the vent's exit. Its red eye blinked slowly, scanning the corridor. "Dame," Jax muttered. "Didn't think they'd have patrol bots down here." Lura tensed. "What do we do?" Jax pulled something from his belt, a small EMP device. "Watch and learn," he whispered. With perfect timing, Jax flicked the device forward. The tiny ball rolled across the floor, coming to a stop beneath the drone. For a second, nothing happened. Then, Z8P. The drone flickered, twitched, and powered down, its metal frame clunking to the ground. Jax smirked. "Told you. No problem." Lura exhaled in relief. They climbed out of the vent and into the dimly lit corridor. Now the real mission began. Finding Virax. The fortress was massive, its hallways filled with cargo crates, stolen goods, and weapons of every kind. Jax led Lura through the shadows, avoiding patrols and slipping past distracted guards. Then, Lura froze. Her eyes went wide. "He's here," she whispered. Jax stopped. "Where?" Lura turned her head, following the pull of her bond. She pointed. "That way." Jax followed her through the maze of corridors until they reached a massive holding bay. Inside, dozens of creatures were caged, their roars and growls filling the air. And in the largest cage, Virax. The dragon lay on the floor, his body bound in energy restraints. His scales looked dull, his breathing heavy. Lura pressed a hand to the glass, feeling his pain through the bond. "We have to get him out," she whispered. Jax studied the security locks. "This place is locked down tight. We can't just walk in and open the door." Lura's jaw clenched. "Then what do we do?" Jax cracked his knuckles. "We steal the damn keys." The infiltration. The air inside the Screthy fortress was thick with the scent of oil, metal, and something far worse, the unmistakable stench of captivity. The dimly lit corridors buzzed with the sound of machines processing stolen goods, alien creatures growling from their cages, and mercenaries laughing over bottles of stolen liquor. Jax Carter moved like a ghost through the shadows, Lura close behind him. They had made it this far without setting off alarms, but now came the hard part. Getting to Virax was one thing. Getting out alive, that was another story. Jax crouched behind a stack of metal crates, peeking out toward the main security station. That's where they kept the master control keys, the ones that could unlock every cage in the fortress. Unfortunately, the Screthy weren't stupid. A cyborg Screthy warrior stood in front of the security door, his body reinforced with metal plating, red cybernetic eyes scanning the area. Lura's breath caught. "That thing is guarding the keys." Jax smirked. "Of course it is. Would be too easy otherwise." Lura clenched her fists. "So what's the plan?" Jax considered his options. Option 1. Try to fight the cyborg. Bad idea. The thing was bigger, stronger, and armed to the teeth. Option 2. Sneak past and hack the security panel. Also risky. The cyborg scanners would detect movement instantly. Option 3. Cause a distraction and let someone else do the dirty work. Jax's smirk widened. He loved option 3. Chaos in the fortress. Jax pulled a small holo device from his belt. With a few quick taps, he hacked into the fortress's speaker system. "Whatever you're doing, stop," Lura whispered urgently. "Relax," Jax murmured, grinning. A second later, a deep booming alarm blared through the entire base. Warning. Containment VARICH in CC249. The cyborg Screthy stiffened, its red eyes flashing. "Perfect," Jax muttered. Within moments, guards started running toward the alarm, leaving the security station unguarded. "Go, go, go," Jax whispered, sprinting toward the security door. Lura followed, her heart hammering, as she watched the cyborg warrior hesitate, scanning the area. If it detected them, it would kill them in seconds. Jax reached the security panel and plugged in a hacking module. Come on," he muttered, watching as the system slowly cracked. Behind them, the cyborg's head suddenly snapped toward their direction. Lura froze. Jax gritted his teeth. Almost there. The cyborg took a step forward. BEP. The lock clicked open. "Inside, now," Jax hissed, pulling Lura with him as the door slid shut behind them. The master controls. The security room was small, but filled with screens showing every part of the fortress. The docking bays, the weapons storages, and the creature holding cells. Lura's eyes immediately locked onto the screen showing Virax. The dragon was still in chains, his once bright golden eyes dim with exhaustion. "We're running out of time," she whispered. Jax nodded. "Let's crack this thing open." He moved to the main control panel, fingers flying across the keys. One by one, the cages unlocked. The fortress was about to have a very big problem. The prison break. The first creature that broke free was a Korgathian warbeast, a four-armed predator with razor-sharp fangs. The second was a Zerkian fire serpent, which immediately started spewing flames into the nearest guards. And then, Virax's cage snapped open. The dragon's head lifted as his restraints vanished. A deep, rumbling growl shook the walls. Lura could feel his anger, his hunger for freedom. Then he spread his wings and roared. Chaos erupted in the fortress. The captured beasts turned on their captors, attacking guards, smashing crates, and burning equipment. The Skrethi sounded the alarms, but it was already too late. Lyra turned to Jax, eyes wide. "We have to get to Virax." Jax grinned. "Oh, don't worry. He's coming to us." The reunion. Virax tore through the fortress like a storm, fire spewing from his mouth as Skrethi mercenaries scattered in terror. Lyra and Jax ran to the main holding bay, just as Virax burst through the doors. For a moment, Lyra couldn't move. Then the dragon's golden eyes locked onto hers. Her bond with Virax flared back to life, stronger than ever. Lyra sprinted forward, throwing her arms around his massive snout. "I'm here," she whispered. "You're free now." Virax let out a soft, deep rumble, lowering his head to her touch. Then his gaze shifted to Jax. The dragon's nostrils flared. Jax blinked. "Bah, he's not gonna eat me, is he?" Lyra smiled. "No, he knows you saved him." Jax exhaled. "Good, because I do not want to explain to people how I got eaten by a dragon." Virax suddenly snapped his head to the side, his eyes narrowing. Lyra's stomach dropped. More Skrethi warriors were coming, and this time they were bringing heavy weapons. Jax cursed. "All right, time to go." Lyra jumped onto Virax's back as the dragon unfurled his wings. Jax sprinted toward them just as Virax took off, grabbing him mid-air in his claws. "Gah! IDIDNTMEN like this," Jax shouted as the dragon swooped toward the exit. Lyra couldn't help but laugh. The great escape. Outside, the entire fortress was in chaos. Jax's Black Star was docked nearby, its engines still running. Lyra pointed. "There, we have tow." Boom! A massive turret cannon exploded near them, sending shockwaves through the air. The cyborg Skrethi had returned, and this time it was carrying a plasma cannon the size of a truck. Jax's eyes widened. "Oh, come on." The cyborg took aim. Virax let out a deafening roar and dove straight for it. The Skrethi warrior fired, but Virax twisted midair, dodging the blast. Then, Virax unleashed a jet of blue fire. The plasma cannon melted instantly. The cyborg didn't even have time to scream before it was engulfed in flames. Jax whooped. "Hell yeah." Lyra grinned. "Told you he was powerful." The dragon swooped down, dropping Jax onto the Black Star's cockpit before landing beside it. Jax scrambled to his feet. "Next time, can we use a ramp?" Lyra just laughed as Virax leaped into the cargo bay. Jax slammed the ship into full throttle. The Black Star blasted away, leaving the burning fortress behind. For the first time in days, Lyra felt whole again. Virax was home. But as they soared into the stars, Jax's face darkened. Because this wasn't over yet. The human versus the Skrethi. The Black Star cut through the darkness of space like a predator on the hunt. Jax Carter sat in the pilot's chair, hands gripping the controls as he watched the Skrethi warships appear on the radar. Red blips. 5 of them. They weren't running. They were waiting. Lyra sat beside him, her golden eyes filled with concern. "Why aren't they chasing us?" Jax exhaled slowly. "Because they don't have to." He tapped the console, zooming in on the lead warship. It was bigger than the rest, its metal hull marked with jagged scars, glowing with dark red energy lines. Lyra stiffened. "That's not just any Skrethi ship." Jax's jaw tightened. "No, that's a warlord's flagship." A moment later, the ship's communication screen blinked to life. A towering Skrethi warlord appeared, a beast of a creature with blackened battle armor. 4 muscular arms crossed over his chest. His cold yellow eyes locked onto Jax with something between amusement and recognition. "You should have stayed hidden, human." Jax leaned back, giving him a lazy grin. "And you should have brushed your teeth before calling me Vorkel. That breath could kill a planet." The warlord's lip curled in a snarl. Lyra looked between them, confused. "You know him?" Jax sighed. "Yeah, we got history." Vorkel's voice rumbled through the comms. You are a traitor, Carter. You walked away from our deal. From our war. Lura's blood ran cold. War, she whispered. Jax, what is he talking about? Jax didn't look at her. He kept his gaze locked on the warlord. This isn't about the past, he said. You stole something that didn't belong to you. Vorkel laughed, deep and menacing. Stole? No, Carter. I simply reclaimed power. That dragon should be a weapon, not a pet. Lura's hands curled into fists. Virax is not a weapon. Vorkel ignored her. He tilted his head. Tell me, Carter, why do you care? Since when do you fight for anyone but yourself? Jax's smirk faded. And for the first time, Lura saw something different in him. Not just confidence. Not just recklessness. But guilt. Jax tapped the controls, cutting the transmission. He turned to Lura. Strap in. We're about to get real personal with those warships. Lura's eyes widened. You're going to fight them. There's 5 of them. Jax cracked his knuckles. Yeah, should be fun. The space battle begins. The Skrethi warships moved in, forming a blockade. Jax slammed the throttle forward. The Black Star rocketed ahead. The first enemy ship fired, sending plasma bolts streaking through space. Jax twisted the ship sideways, narrowly dodging the blasts. Ha! Missed me, you ugly bastards! He shouted, flipping a switch. The Black Star's rear cannons fired, blasting a hole straight through the enemy's shields. The warship shuddered violently as explosions erupted across its hull. 1 down. 4 to go. The second ship swooped in fast, trying to cut them off. Jax spun the Black Star into a roll, diving underneath the warship's belly. He pulled up at the last second, dropping a payload of EMP mines. VZZZT. The mines detonated, sending an energy pulse through the warship's systems. The enemy ship lost control, spiraling into the asteroid belt. 2 down. 3 left. Lura clung to her seat. You're insane. Jax grinned. Yup. The third warship opened fire with homing missiles. Jax slammed a button. The Black Star's flares launched, tricking the missiles into exploding harmlessly behind them. Jax flipped another switch. The ship's front cannons lit up, sending a concentrated beam of energy straight through the warship's cockpit. Boom! The ship exploded. 3 down. 2 left. But before Jax could react, the flagship moved. It fired a graviton pulse. Jax's stomach dropped as the Black Star jerked violently, caught in the gravitational pull. The engine sputtered. The ship stopped moving. Lura's voice filled with panic. They've got us. Jax growled. Damn it. The flagship's tractor beam locked on, pulling them toward the massive warship. Vorkel's voice echoed through the comms. You always think you can win, Carter. But in the end, you are just human. Jax clenched his fists. Then, he did something Lura never expected. He smirked. Yeah, Jax said. Then let me show you why humans are a problem. He punched a red button on a console. The Black Star's hidden missile bay opened. A second later, 3 high-explosive torpedoes launched directly at the flagship. Vorkel's smirk disappeared. The warlord barely had time to shout an order before. Boom! The torpedoes slammed into the warship's engines. The tractor beam cut out. The Black Star broke free. Jax yanked the controls hard. Hold on. The ship spun away from the explosion, streaking toward open space at full speed. Lura gripped her seat as the massive flagship erupted into flames behind them. Jax whooped. Sucks to be you, Vorkel. Lura stared at him. You just took out a Skrethi warlord. Jax winked. Told you. Humans are a problem. The aftermath. Minutes later, as they drifted into the safety of deep space, Lura finally exhaled. Virax, curled up in the cargo hold, let out a soft growl, almost like approval. Jax leaned back in his chair. Well, that was fun. Lura shook her head. That was insane. Jax turned to her. You still think I'm just some reckless idiot? Lura hesitated. Then she smiled. No, she admitted. I think you're worse. Jax laughed. Fair enough. But in the back of his mind, he knew something. Vorkel wasn't dead. And the Skrethi wouldn't forget this. For now, they had won. But the war, it was just getting started. The escape and betrayal. The black star floated in the silence of deep space, the glow of distant stars casting a dim light on its hull. Inside the cockpit, Jax Carter leaned back in his chair, boots crossed over the console, smirking as if he hadn't just survived a battle against one of the most dangerous warlords in the galaxy. Lura, however, wasn't as relaxed. She paced the small space, her hands clenched into fists. We can't just sit here. The Skrethi won't stop hunting us. Jax exhaled, rubbing his temples. Kid, we just took out half their fleet. They're probably too busy putting out fires to chase us. Lura shot him a glare. They will regroup. And next time, they'll come in force. Jax shrugged. Then we run faster. Lura's frustration boiled over. How can you be so? She stopped. Because something felt wrong. A cold shiver ran down her spine. It was Virax. The dragon was curled up in the cargo bay, his golden eyes half closed. He should have been resting after everything they had been through. But his breathing was shallow. Too shallow. Lura rushed toward him, placing her hands on his scales. Virax. The dragon didn't respond. A sharp pain shot through her skull. Her bond with Virax wavered. It was like something was cutting her off from him. No, 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 she whispered. Jax, sensing the shift in her tone, walked over. What's wrong? Lura turned, her face pale. Something's happening to him. Jax frowned. He was fine a minute ago. Lura closed her eyes, focusing on their bond. What she felt made her blood turn to ice. A poison. Not physical. Something else. Something in his mind. Then it hit her. The Skrethi hadn't just captured Virax. They had done something to him. The trap revealed. Jax cursed under his breath. Damn it. What did they do to him? Lura's voice was tight with panic. I don't know, but it's blocking our bond. I can feel his pain, but I can't reach him. Jax clenched his fists. All right. There's gotta be a way to fix this. Lura barely heard him. She was too focused on Virax's labored breathing. Then she felt something else. A presence. Not Virax. Not the Skrethi. Something deeper, darker. A whisper slithered through her mind. He belongs to us now. Lura gasped, her eyes snapping open. Jax grabbed her shoulders. Hey, what just happened? She shook her head. I don't know. I felt something. Jax's expression hardened. That's it. We need help. Lura looked up at him. From who? Jax sighed. I know a guy. Lura hesitated. Do you trust him? Jax's jaw tightened. No. The contact. Jax punched a set of coordinates into the console. A few minutes later, the black star arrived at the edge of a dying planet. The world below was cracked and scorched, its surface littered with ruins from an ancient war. At its center, a massive space station hovered above the wasteland. It was not a friendly place. Jax turned to Lura. Welcome to Outpost 9. Lura frowned. Who are we meeting? Jax exhaled. A friend. Lura didn't believe him. Neither did Virax, who let out a weak growl. Jax docked the ship and led them into the outpost. The place was filthy, filled with bounty hunters, smugglers, and ex-soldiers looking for trouble. Lura stayed close to Jax, feeling the weight of dozens of eyes on her as they walked through the dimly lit corridors. Finally, they stopped at a heavily secured door. Jax pressed a button. A few seconds later, a deep voice growled through the speaker. You've got nerve showing up here, Carter. Jax grinned. Good to see you too, Ravos. Now open the damn door. A long pause. Then, the door hissed open. The deal with the devil. Inside, the room was filled with holographic maps, alien artifacts, and weapons from 100 different worlds. Sitting in the middle of it all was a massive reptilian alien, his dark green scales lined with golden tattoos. His yellow eyes glowed with intelligence. And something dangerous. Ravos the Broker. A legend in the underworld. If something was stolen, sold, or smuggled anywhere in the galaxy, Ravos knew about it. He leaned back in his chair, studying Jax with amusement. You look worse than usual, Ravos muttered. Jax smirked. You're as ugly as ever. Ravos chuckled. So, what do you want? Jax's face turned serious. The Skrethi did something to this dragon. We need to know what. Ravos looked at Virax, his sharp gaze flickering with recognition. He stood slowly. This isn't just any dragon, Ravos murmured. This is an Imperial Soulbinder. Lura frowned. A what? Ravos turned to her. Your dragon isn't just a rare creature. He's a living weapon. Jax sighed. Great. More people who want him dead. Ravos shook his head. No, not dead. His gaze darkened. Controlled. Lura's breath caught. What do you mean? Ravos pressed a button. A holographic display flickered to life. It showed a small, glowing implant. Jax cursed. Mind tech. Ravos nodded. The Skrethi didn't just capture Virax. They implanted a neural override. If they activate it, your dragon won't be yours anymore. Lura's heart pounded. Can we remove it? Ravos tilted his head. Maybe. Jax narrowed his eyes. What do you want in return? Ravos grinned. You know me well, Carter. He leaned forward. There's a bounty hunter after me. Kill him, and I'll help your dragon. Lura looked at Jax. You can't seriously be considering this. Jax sighed. You got a better idea. Lura clenched her fists. Virax let out a weak growl. Time was running out. Finally, she exhaled. Fine. We do it. Ravos smiled. Then we have a deal. The final fight and victory. The black star cut through the darkness of deep space, moving fast toward its next deadly mission. Inside, the tension was thick, heavier than the weight of the stars outside. Jax Carter sat in the pilot's chair, his fingers drumming against the controls, his mind racing. Lura stood beside him, arms crossed, her golden eyes flickering with worry. And in the cargo hold, Virax lay curled up, still weak, still trapped inside his own mind. The Skrethi had left a monster inside him, a neural implant that could turn him into a weapon. And the only person who could remove it. Ravos the Broker, a man who had just sent them on a kill mission. Lura exhaled sharply. I don't like this. Jax sighed. Yeah. Well, I don't like a lot of things. Lura frowned. You're just going to kill some random bounty hunter because Ravos told you to. Jax's jaw clenched. Not just some random bounty hunter. He pressed a button, and a holographic image appeared in the air. Lura's breath caught. The bounty hunter's face was hidden behind a sleek, black helmet, his armor lined with dark crimson plating. He stood tall, a massive rifle slung across his back. But what sent a chill through the air was his name. Zarek Kane. Lura turned to Jax. Who is he? Jax's expression darkened. Trouble. The hunt begins. The coordinates Ravos had given them led to a derelict space station, floating in the void like a ghost. It was old, pre-war tech, built before the Galactic Uprising. Most of the station's power systems were offline, leaving only emergency lights flickering like dying stars. Jax set the black star into stealth mode, gliding in silently. Lura sat beside him, checking her plasma pistol. So, what's the plan? Jax smirked. Plan? We find Kane. We put a hole in him. We leave. Lura rolled her eyes. Great. Real detailed. Jax checked his blaster. Hey, sometimes simple works. As the airlock hissed open, the two of them stepped onto the abandoned station, weapons ready. The corridors were silent. Too silent. Jax's instincts screamed danger. He moved carefully, every step measured, every corner checked. Then, a red laser sight flickered across his chest. Jax barely had time to react before. Bang! He dove sideways as a sniper round exploded against the wall behind him. Lyra spun, blaster raised. Where? Jax gritted his teeth. Up top. Through the darkness, a shadow moved. A figure dropped down from the ceiling, landing without a sound. Then he stepped into the dim light. Zarek Kane. The bounty hunter's black helmet reflected the flickering station lights. His voice was cold, filtered through a mechanical modulator. Carter. Jax exhaled, rolling his shoulders. Kane. Been a while. Kane's head tilted slightly. You always did run from your debts. Jax smirked. Yeah, well, I'm not running this time. Lyra's grip tightened on her pistol. We don't have to fight. Just walk away. Kane didn't even glance at her. I don't care about you, he said flatly. His visor locked back onto Jax. Just him. Jax sighed. See, now my feelings are hurt. Then he moved. Jax versus Kane. The two men clashed like titans. Jax drew his blaster, firing in rapid succession. Kane dodged. Too fast. He rolled forward, closing the distance, swinging his rifle like a melee weapon. Jax barely ducked in time, the rifle whistling past his head. He countered with a punch to Kane's ribs, solid armor. No effect. Kane twisted, slamming his elbow into Jax's gut. Jax staggered back, gasping. Lyra fired her pistol, but Kane spun, deflecting the shot with his armored gauntlet. Then he dashed forward, slamming Lyra into the wall. Jax's eyes flashed with fury. He lunged, tackling Kane to the ground. The two rolled, fists flying, trading brutal strikes. Jax took a hit to the jaw. Kane took a hit to the visor. Then, Kane grabbed Jax's wrist and twisted. Jax let out a sharp curse as his blaster was torn from his grip. Kane pinned him down, rifle aimed at his skull. This time, Carter, Kane said, voice like ice, you don't walk away. Lyra's choice. Lyra's hands trembled as she raised her blaster. But she couldn't get a clear shot. If she missed, she'd hit Jax. Her mind raced. She thought of Virax. She thought of everything Jax had done for her. And she made her choice. Lyra closed her eyes and reached out with her mind. Not to Jax. To Virax. To their bond. The dragon stirred. Lyra's heartbeat cinched with his. She whispered two words. Wake up. The dragon awakens. Miles away, inside the Black Star's cargo hold, Virax's golden eyes snapped open. His body tensed, his mind clearing. The implant inside him short-circuited. And then, he roared. The ship shook, the walls trembling as the dragon burst free from his chains. Virax launched himself toward the station, breaking through the airlock with a deafening crash. Zarek Kane's head jerked up in surprise. Jax took the opportunity, slamming his fist into Kane's helmet. Kane staggered back, just as Virax's massive claws tore through the wall. The bounty hunter barely had time to react before a wave of dragonfire engulfed him. Victory and aftermath. The battle was over. Lyra ran to Virax, pressing her forehead against his. Their bond was whole again. Jax, bruised and bloody, gave a crooked smile. Hell of an entrance, big guy. Virax let out a soft, amused growl. Jax turned to Lyra. Guess we don't need Ravos after all. She nodded. Let's get out of here. Jax smirked. Now you're speaking my language. As they boarded the Black Star, leaving the ruined station behind, Lyra turned to Jax. What happens now? Jax leaned back in his chair, watching the stars streak past. Now, he grinned, we find out who's really pulling the strings. Because this wasn't over. Not by a long shot.